If you're a Java expert, you love the power of the language, but you probably get bogged down by the complexities of modern web development. Well, you're going to want to pay close attention. Today, we're digging into wffweb, a pretty unique framework that promises to let you build complex, secure web apps, almost like you're building a classic desktop application. Let's dive in and see how it pulls this off. So just imagine for a second, what if you could sidestep all that usual complexity of separating your client and server code? What if you could build and manage your entire user interface using the power and security of pure Java, kind of like you would with an old-school desktop app? That right there, that's the core promise of the framework we're exploring today. So how in the world does wffweb actually achieve this desktop-like simplicity, but for the web? Well, it all starts with a pretty radical architectural choice, making the user interface completely, 100% controlled by the server. You know how it usually is with web development, right? There's this constant back and forth between the client and the server. You're trying to manage state on both ends, you're building APIs to connect them, and you're securing every single one of those endpoints. This separation can introduce a ton of complexity and, honestly, a lot of potential security holes. HTML just flips this whole script with a concept they call object-oriented HTML. Instead of writing HTML files or messing with templates, you construct the entire UI by creating Java objects that represent HTML tags. The whole document object model, the DOM, it lives on your server as a collection of Java objects. And look, this little code snippet here, it shows you exactly what we're talking about. Notice, we're not writing strings of HTML. We're creating a new body object and then programmatically giving it a child object, a no tag, with our text. It's a completely object-oriented, type-safe way to build your view.
So here's the big takeaway, the really crucial point. Your UI is no longer some separate thing. It's just another object inside your Java application, living in memory on the server. And that means it can be managed, manipulated, and secured with the full power of the Java ecosystem, right alongside all your business logic.
Okay, so this whole server-controlled approach has this huge knock-on effect for how we structure our applications. It actually allows wffweb to introduce a new architectural pattern that goes way beyond the traditional Model View Controller, or MVC, that we're all used to. All right, so let's compare. With good old MVC, you spend a ton of time writing that controller logic, right? The glue that connects the model to the view. While in wffweb's approach, a massive chunk of that work just disappears. The developer just focuses on the model and what they call the logical template. And they call this pattern MLTP. That's model, logical template, and push. So you handle the model, that's your business data. Then you build the logical template, which is just that UI made of Java objects we were just talking about. And the push part, the framework handles that for you, automatically over a WebSocket. Any change to your UI objects on the server is instantly reflected in the user's browser. And I love this quote from the developers because it just hits the nail on the head. You're not thinking about REST endpoints or AJAX calls. You're just writing code. You change a property on a UI object and it updates on the screen. For any Java dev who's ever worked with desktop frameworks like Swing, this should feel incredibly familiar and really, really powerful. All right, so this server-side architecture sounds cool in theory, right? But what can you actually build with it? Let's take a look at some of the specific features this enables for creating some truly dynamic user interfaces. Okay, first up, there's this really powerful tool for real-time applications called the Shared Tag Content class. This is the absolute key to synchronizing different parts of your UI, and get this, even across different browser tabs or windows, all from a single spot in your Java code. Just think about a stock ticker or some live dashboard. With shared tag content, you just update the value once in your Java code, and boom, every single tag that's listening to it updates automatically. You can even apply different formatters, so the same piece of data might show up as a dollar amount in one place and as part of a chart somewhere else. And since it's thread safe, it's built for those high concurrency apps. Next up, let's talk single-page applications, or SPAs. wffweb is designed for SPAs, but it handles routing in a really unique, super efficient way. Instead of the client downloading some huge JavaScript bundle to manage all the routes, all that routing logic lives on the server. So here's how it works. The client just tells the server, hey, I'm at this new URL now. The server then runs a quick check, basically a little true-false test to see what needs to change. It figures out the difference and pushes only the minimal set of changes needed to update the view.
There's no full-page reload, just a tiny targeted update. This is incredibly fast and saves a ton of bandwidth.
All this talk about efficiency and architecture naturally leads us to the big three questions for any serious application. How's the performance? Is it secure? And can it scale? Let's see how wffweb stacks up. Well, the performance story is pretty strong. For starters, there's zero disk I/O when it's building a page. It's all happening in RAM, which is super fast. Second, that persistent WebSocket connection gets rid of all the overhead from repeated HTTP requests. And like we just saw, it only sends the smallest possible changes to the client, not entire HTML pages. And what about security? Well, the benefits here are really clear. Because you're keeping almost all of your UI and business logic on the server, you're massively shrinking the attack surface on the client side. There's just less code exposed in the browser for attackers to poke at. You combine that with a secure WebSocket, and you've got a really robust setup for sensitive apps like banking or finance.
And scaling? This is a huge deal for enterprise applications. You can stick your wffweb instances behind a load balancer, no problem. But here's the kicker. You don't need sticky sessions, where the load balancer has to keep sending a user back to the exact same server every time. Because of its design, any server node can handle any user's request, which makes your whole infrastructure way simpler. And if you're worried about getting locked into some weird proprietary ecosystem, don't be. wffweb is designed to play nicely with everything else in the Java world. It's totally style agnostic, so bring on Bootstrap, Materialize, whatever you want. It runs on standard servers like Tomcat or Jetty, and it's even compatible with GraalVM, so you can build those incredibly fast-starting native executables. So, after all that, we finally get to the most important question of all. Should you consider using this framework for your next project?
Let's break down exactly where this framework is built to shine.
So if you look at the comparison, the sweet spot for wffweb is pretty obvious. We're talking about complex, stateful applications. Think single-page business apps, real-time analytics dashboards, trading platforms, or those high-security financial portals where centralizing all your logic on the server is a massive, massive win. But on the flip side, the developers are upfront about it. For a simple, static website with no user logins, a traditional MVC framework might be a more straightforward choice.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. For years, the big trend in web development has been to push more and more logic out to the client's browser. But wffweb represents this powerful counterargument that for a certain class of complex, secure applications, the future might actually lie in bringing all that intelligence back home to the server. It's a compelling idea to consider.